In this video, I'm going to share the exact structure and numbers that I've used to take multiple coaches from under 3K a month to 6 figures plus in just 12 months. And also what I've used to take multiple coaches to their first 5K per month. Now, the reason I'm recording this video is because a lot of coaches that I speak to, and I speak to a lot of coaches on a weekly basis, simply don't know their numbers and they are shooting in the dark when it comes to signing clients and growing their business. They're showing up. They're consistent, they're motivated, they have good work ethic, and they have everything they need to succeed. But the reason that they're not succeeding is very simply, they don't know what to do, they don't know what to fix, they don't know what's broken, and so they just do a lot of random things. And so that's why we're going to dive into the different stages of a person going from a stranger to a client, what those stages look like from a numbers standpoint, what your numbers should look like, how to actually track your numbers, and then how to make your business just super easy to grow, super predictable to grow. And easy is maybe not the best word because it's never easy to grow your business, but super simple to grow, where you can look and say, hey, this is the thing that's broken, this is what I need to fix. So let's take a look. First and foremost, we're going to run with a 5K per month template here for organic content. So this is not factoring in ads, it's not factoring in if you're paying for traffic or paying for leads or anything like that. This is simply if you are showing up, posting content on a platform and you want to get to 5K per month from organic content. So we're going to work as well with a upfront payment as opposed to monthly recurring payments. Now you might do monthly recurring payments, which is fine, but obviously it gets a little bit messy to actually track and work out if we're trying to mix them both. So we're going to just work with upfronts, but obviously if you take upfronts, then you can get paid quite quickly and get to 5K per month quite quickly. If you do monthly recurring, well then your first 5K month will take longer, but you will have more consistency. And once you actually look at those things over the course of a calendar year, it's going to look pretty much the same whether or not you do upfronts or monthly recurring, and depending on who you work with and depending on what you kind of like to do from a sales perspective yourself, this can change. But for the purpose of just keeping this nice and simple, we are going to work with a €1,000 program. And we're going to assume that you want to sell 5 of those each month and hit 5K per month. So first and foremost, you'll be able to see here that we've got this target in 5 clients per month. And we can now start to adjust the different sections of this sheet. Now, this sheet is very simple. On the left-hand side, we've got assumptions. And these are assumptions. These are things that we do not know, but we assume. And this is like our starting point, if you will. If you're into health and fitness, you've probably done a fat loss phase at some point, and you probably know that you ballpark your starting calories using a calorie calculator, and then you kind of adjust that as you go depending on what the body weight and the body composition does, right? So this is exactly the same thing. We're just doing it for the numbers in your business. So let's assume that your average client value is €1,000, and let's assume that you're trying to close that up front. Let's assume that to get 5K per month, we're aiming for 5 clients per month. Let's also assume a 50% close rate, okay? So let's assume that every 10 calls you take, 5 of them turn into clients. Let's assume a 75% attendance rate, meaning that if you book 12 calls, 10 of them show. So in order to actually get 10 calls, take 10 calls, close 5 clients, you need 12 people to say yes, and then 2 of them may not show. Maybe 12 to 13. I'm not sure if it divides exactly, but 12 to 13. And then finally, the booking rate, conversations to calls booked. Let's assume that's 20%. So let's assume that for every 5 qualified warm leads you speak to, one of those 5 decides to book a call. Okay, these are our starting assumptions. Now, if we base things on these assumptions, it becomes much easier to kind of see like what's broken. Okay, so we can work backwards from this. If we need to close 5 clients to hit our target, and if we have a 50% close rate, well then we can quite quickly get to a target, right? So let's look down here. We've got 5 clients that we want to close. We must complete 10 calls if we have a 50% close rate, okay? Above that, we've got the calls booked. Now, if we have a 75% show-up rate, we probably need to book 12, maybe 13 calls. And if 1 in 5 of the conversations that we have turns into a book call, well then we need to have 5 times as many conversations with warm leads as that per month to hit 12 calls booked. So that would be 60. Okay, so now all of a sudden, just because we know these numbers, and I'll explain what to do with these shortly, because you might think, oh, well, I don't know my numbers, and how do I know if these are the numbers or not? Short answer is you don't. You have to find out. But now we've got some targets. Okay, so we've got a target of 60 conversations, and this is not just spray and pray outreach to people who, you know, you have no kind of, it's not like cold DMing just loads of random strangers and just messaging them and hoping for the best. This is actually engaged leads, people who are interested in what you do, people who have expressed some interest, people who have maybe come through some piece of content that is relevant to what you sell. Like, these are people who are somewhat self-identified as being a lead, right? They're not just like talk to strangers. But that kind of gets this down to 60 good quality leads. Wasp just landed on my finger. That was lucky. We want to make sure that, you know, we have a number to start with. So let's say this is our number. That means that, you know, each week we've got 15 conversations that we have to have. If we break that down to, you know, the working day, well, then we've got 3 conversations per day to have over the course of a month in order to actually hit our target. Now, that doesn't actually sound like that much, right? Like, yes, you might have to go and engage people. Yes, you might have to give away lead magnets, or you might have to run free trainings, or you might have to do things with your email list. Like, there's lots of things you can do to generate leads and generate conversations. But when you actually break it down, 3 conversations a day is not that much, okay? Now, you might think, you know, there's lots of these numbers that are slightly different for you, so you can readjust them and whatever else. But to sign 5 clients is actually not that difficult. Now, what's going to happen is, you know, this is our key performance indicators, your KPIs. And if your revenue target is 5 grand and you're having 60 conversations across the course of the month, and you want to make 10 offers on sales calls and you want to close 50%, that is going to get you to your 5 grand, okay? As you go through the month, what you'll actually tend to see is, let's say we've got 60 as a target. Let's say we get to the end of the month and we've actually done 50 messages, okay? Let's say out of those 50 messages, we have booked 12 calls. Let's say that out of those 12, 11 showed. And let's say out of the 11, we got our 5 sales. Now, what actually has happened here is we had a target of 60. We actually had 50 conversations. We completed that to 83%. And we have 10 left as a gap to target. But the way that it's worked out, we've actually still hit our target of our 5 sales, okay? Because our call to conversation rate, which we expected to be 20%. So these percentages here, by the way, are just our targets that we put in up here, okay? So, you know, we're targeting for every conversation that we start, we're targeting for 20% of those to turn into calls, okay? So that's what that percentage means. That's why there's no percentage in the top one, because there's nothing before the conversation. So this is the conversation to call percentage. Now, the target was 60 with 12 calls booked, which would be 20%. But we might find after month 1 that, well, actually, our conversion rate here was 24%, meaning that we actually only need 50 conversations in order to book 12 calls if things continue at that rate. We may also find that, hey, we expected, you know, 75% of people to show up to calls, when in fact, it was slightly higher. 91% of people showed up. And, you know, we then realized that actually we maybe don't need to book 12 calls. Maybe we only need to book 11 calls. And then finally, you know, maybe we were bang on with the client signed, and, you know, 50% of those signed up. And I'm not sure why that's showing as 45.5, but it should be 50. Anyhow, not to worry. Basically, it'll show you what areas are stronger and what areas are weaker, and it'll give you your areas to improve. Now, what will happen as well is, like, over time, you know, in your first month, this might be better because you're reaching out to warm people and people you know, and you're asking for referrals and testimonials. As you go, some of these numbers might change. So really, this is all about gathering data and getting really, really clear on what are these rates. Like, in order to close 5 clients, how many calls do I need? how many calls must I book, how many people must I speak to book those calls. And then if you want to grow your business, there's kind of like, well, there's a few things you can do, but on the client acquisition front, if we forget about lifetime value and retention and all of those things, but if we just want to bring more people into the business, so on the kind of front end, then there's a few things that we can do. We can obviously increase our pricing. We can increase our close rate. We can increase just the pure volume. We can't, if we don't want to actually increase how good we are at any individual section here, we can get better at closing. We can get better at, getting people to attend. We can get better at people booking calls through our conversations. Or we can just be like, hey, I'm happy with all these numbers. Let me now smash volume. And that might be when you add some simple ads, or you add something else in that's putting more volume into your funnel. I also didn't kind of address the word funnel, by the way. Funnel is really simple. Like, people hear the word funnel and they think, oh, it's super complicated. But honestly, a funnel is just simple. Like, a funnel is just really a journey. It's like a step-by-step process. In theory, when you go to the supermarket, right, you're kind of going through a funnel, right? You walk in the door, you probably drive in the car park, and then you go in the door, and then you go into the aisles, and you get all the things that you need, and then you end up at the checkout, and they collect the money, and then you go out the door again, right? That's basically just a sales funnel. And they get you in through advertising, they get you in through doing deals or sending out catalogs. Like, that's all the front end stuff to start the conversations. But it's still a funnel. Like, everything is a funnel. And, a funnel can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be. But once you know your numbers and you have a simple funnel, then you can go and add the complexity. Then you can add, more creative ways to bring people in and to fill that funnel as well. So don't be put off by the word funnel. Funnel just means journey or process. And you already have a funnel for signing clients. It just might not be very streamlined, or you may not understand how each component works and fits together, but you already have a funnel. So next thing that I want to look at is just, how to actually use a chart like this, because you've got the dashboard, you hopefully understand the numbers now. And if you want to make sure you hit your numbers, you need to be tracking. So very simply, over the course of 4 weeks, you want to just track all of these numbers. And you want to make sure that, okay, I'm doing 15, maybe I only got 5 done this week. Well, that then leaves me with 25 to hit my 60 target on the final week. Okay, and then you can start to see your trends, and over time, you'll be able to see, is my, is the process that I am using working as I expected it to be? And hopefully the answer there is yes, and you'll end up with something like this. If it's not working, if you're having tons of conversations, but things are not working. So let's say we're having 60 conversations, but we've only booked like 4 calls. Well, we now know that we don't need to try and improve our offer. And the reason this says proposal sent is because some of my clients work with corporate, so they do a proposal versus a sales call. So in this case, if you're a coach, we can just get rid of this column, and we can just call this, clients closed. Same thing, but usually in the corporate world, you have a call, and then you send a proposal because there's multiple people involved in the decision-making process often. So, in this case, we would just use this as calls completed, clients closed. So let's say that we did this, and let's say we did 1, 1, 1, 0, 2, and maybe it was like a very high close rate. Maybe the close rate was 75%. Maybe you took 4 calls and you closed 75%. Now, you might be like, oh, my business isn't growing. And then you go and change your offer. But the offer is working because the clients are closing. So this is what I see all the time. People are solving the wrong problems in their business. They might go and fix the offer, but the reality is they're actually closing loads of deals and the offer is perfect. They just need to sort out why so many people who they're having conversations with are not ending up on calls, because if they just doubled the calls booked, then they wouldn't have to touch their offer and they would double their business. On the flip side, there's a lot of people who might have this and have lots of conversations, but they're not booking a lot of calls. And so they think, I need to go and generate more followers. I need to go and generate more attention. I need to go and generate more audience. But the problem here isn't that you don't have people to talk to. It's that you're not converting those people into book calls. So it's really, really important to know your numbers, because then you can actually go through and, solve the problems that need to be solved. And then the final piece of this is just actually logging things. So again, you're probably doing this to some extent, but it's really, really important just to actually log all of your deals and opportunities. And I use Go High Level for this, which is a piece of software which it all built in, but you can do it on a sheet like this. Date added, the name of the person or the company, depending on if you're doing clients or corporate work, the source where they came from. You can start to see over time, is there a strong source for you where, is there something that seems to be performing a lot better than everything else? Because then you can make that your kind of go-to. And then the stage, where are we at? Is it conversation started? Is it call booked? Is it call completed? Is it future follow-up because they haven't come back to me? What's the value? Again, if you've got different offerings or different clients, then you want to make sure that you're tracking the different values, and you can start to see the value of your pipeline as well. Let's say this is 4,000. Let's say this is 1,000. Let's say this is 750. These are just random numbers, but then you can select all of this. You can go down to the bottom right. You can see, well, there's 5.7K in my pipeline. And you can start to see the opportunities that are there. So really, really important to keep track of your pipeline and its value. Next step as well, if there's something that needs to be done, if there's a follow-up date, if somebody hasn't got back to you, okay, what is the date that they need to be followed up on? And then what is the status here? Is it open? Is it still ongoing? Are you waiting to hear back from them? Have you won it? And is that another client on board? Or have you lost it? And, if so, why did you lose it? What could you do better? How could you improve? So yeah, those are the numbers you need to get to 5K per month. Obviously, you can take this, you can do a version of it for monthly recurring revenue, and you can do it at your 200 or 300 a month or whatever you charge. But it's really, really important that you understand these basic numbers, because you can't even think about running advertisements or doing anything more complex if you don't know these basic numbers organically.